You can hear us okay?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Look very beautiful, my dear.
Thank
Very.
you.
I love the
You both
purple.
look very pretty too.
Aw.
Well,
How's my hair?
I know. You spend hours on it. I can see, Arthur.
yeah, sure. Well, whenever you're ready. Who's opening?
You're
Oh, me?
opening.
Oh,
wait,
I'm
no. Arthur's opening, and you're in.
No. Am I opening?
And
Okay.
this is how
Go
two
this way.
monks
Yeah. Go that way.
fit in one cave.
Dude. All right, whatever. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh, well, if you heard all that, then you don't need an intro, people. But if you haven't heard all that, we are the two monks, one cave, and we're here to shoot the shit for the next hour or so. Again, same thing, like, subscribe, or don't. We don't care. So today, Arorah wants to talk about difficult people because apparently something has happened in her life that has brought certain people in her life.
You're still blaming me for this. Basically, guys, we sit around and say, what are we going to talk about? And I bring something up, and now all of a sudden it's all about me. Well, that's good.
You know what? That's because you're special.
Truly.
Well, all right. So, I mean, but it's an important conversation. I do think it's a good thing because the biggest problem with people and the biggest thing that we have in our lives that will cause our lives to be heaven or cause our life to be hell is our relationships in a discussion. Nothing, I was having a conversation with an older client of mine. We've known each other for a very long time, and they do sort of a radio show, but the radio show was really more of about financial technology, the fintech thing. And one of the things that he's plugged into all the movers and shakers in the tech world and all the analyst people. So everybody, just all behind the scenes people, nobody that anybody would hear of, but they're movers in their industry. And so he's always talking to me about different people that come on and to talk to him, and then all these meetings he has with these important people at Goldman and all these companies. And so he says to me, hey man, so how is it that you get all these people that come from around the world and like you never really seem to have problems with these people? I'm like, because they're people. So what's the problem? And he's just like, I know, but I'm talking they've got these mentalities and these egos and I'm like, let me explain something to you. You're a monkey. And you're a monkey that can't live without other monkeys. You can try to live all you want, but you'll end up becoming crusty, living off the grid, looking out the window, waiting for the black helicopters, and probably making manifestos. You're a monkey that needs monkeys. But the fact of the matter is all of that monkey shit that you're doing right now is that you're upset because you're just around the wrong monkeys. Stop being around the wrong monkeys, man. And he's like, well, I mean, I have to be around these ones. I'm like, no. You're misunderstanding. You're being this monkey around these monkeys. I said, are you the same dude around your mom as around your wife when you're making love? Is that the same? No, you know that there's different versions that are appropriate.
Why did you have to go there? Why did you have to go there?
I'll tell you.
Why? Why this horrible?
I will tell you. Faith alone was priceless, and that's now captured digitally forever.
Well played, my friend. Well played.
I will give you. Yeah. So the point being is, I said you're trying to be this one version of you, and that version is not congruent with these versions. I said you want to understand human relationships, you just have to understand chemistry, because some elements are very philic. They want to be near each other all the time. Oxygen in most things. Some things are very phobic. They don't want to be around anything. They don't like, right? And the ones that, for example, you can put cesium by itself, but you put it near water. Why?
I always like cesium by itself.
Well, cesium likes cesium by
Just a preference.
but the
Just go to your corner drugstore, get a little bit of cesium, put it away.
Well, even then, you got a cell phone, you got lithium in there. Lithium's not very different than cesium when it comes. Throw that shit in water and see how you go. Boom. The point being is the two.
We're still getting started in this like amazing way today.
It's all bad. It's just all bad today. Now, why? Because we're talking about difficult people. Stay
We
tuned.
are.
Right? So does that make lithium bad and water good? Does it make them toxic people? No, it just means that they're not compatible. Stay the fuck away from each other. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Difficult people are either people who point out all of your own shit, and that's why they're difficult, because they're holding your mirror and you don't like it. You don't want to see your ass from that angle, whatever. Or you want them to be compatible in a world that they're not meant for, and you're trying to be a compatible world you're not meant for. I mean, this is where you get difficult or unreasonable people.
Or unreasonable. Okay, so all right. Just gonna throw this one out there because I was thinking about this, that very first unreasonable people or difficult people that I experienced was my parents as a child.
What?
Like they want you to do shit like eat and clean your room and all that. And so I was realizing that, like from the time you're born, you're dealing with difficult people, because what makes them difficult is that they want me to do something and I don't want to do it, or there's, like we're just, just really clashing. So I just want to throw that one on the table of like, it's tough being a kid. It is so tough. People are telling you what to do. You don't have any power.
And yet people can't wait to go back to being children. And when they have no
No one ever leaves it. We think that we're not, but
the first 99
So,
years of
when
infancy are the hardest.
When you were a child, what did you learn how to do instinctually? Right? You learned, you learned how to circumvent your parents. You learned how to press their buttons. You learned what triggers they had, which would allow them the behavior that you wanted. So you would get whatever you wanted by your ability to press their buttons. It's the same thing with everybody else. Instead of being angry at them, instead of thinking of them as difficult, try to understand them. Where are they coming from? What are the buttons that they have? Right? Now, that involves two things. Number one, losing the self. In other words, don't see it from your point of view, see it from their point of view. Right? And number two, we have this thing in Kung Fu called the sidestep, right? Where you don't actually go forward at an attacker, you take a side, a diagonally, right? You step diagonally to the side and you wind up, the attacker runs past you, you wind up behind them, you wind up in a position of power. Now, that's difficult to understand when it comes to the mental or our behavior. So what I like to call it is the lollipop method, okay? Because when the baby is crying, you don't go and you say to the baby, stop crying, you asshole, stop crying. See how well that works out, right? So what do? You give them a lollipop, you distract them from their behavior. And suddenly the baby isn't crying, the baby is really, really happy. It works the same way with adults. Give them a lollipop, figure out what the lollipop is in that situation, and these people will love you forever, and they will stop being difficult.
So give us an example in your life, Arthur.
Well, the one great thing you can do, and this is mirror mind, right? Mirroring them. So mirroring their gestures, mirroring their words, and even mirroring their accents will predispose them. Will predispose them to.
Already, I'm liking you more and more and more.
There you go, right? Talk about the things they want to talk about, not what you want to talk about. Ask them questions that help them talk about themselves rather than you stand there and talk about yourself.
Even more directly, talk about what you want to talk about, but use their words, use their language, and then they'll be totally interested. The thing you have to remember with a child or a dog or a boss, or it doesn't matter, is they're not in your world and you're not in their world. One of the things I teach my students whenever about being a Taoist is that if you're going to follow the Tao, you're not going to be very well liked. It just is what it is. You're not going to be liked. And the reason why you're not going to be liked is because you don't do what we do. So therefore, you're not part of our tribe. You're not part of our whatever. And I said, so how do you mitigate that? And the answer is be a good guest and a good host in other people's lives.
Yep.
Good guest and a good host. You have to understand and appreciate their world. So if I'm talking to somebody who's, in auto repair, I'm going to talk in car stuff.
Right.
If I'm talking to somebody in finance, I'm going to talk finance. And again, I'm going to say what I want to say, because some people I'll do this. I hear this a lot when people talk to me about that, Arthur. They go, oh, so everybody else gets talk, and I never do. I'm like, did your older brother beat the shit out of you a lot? You need a suckle? You want a suckle? It's like,
dude, what? Like,
Oh my God.
The point is, it's
that's
like,
it. I am so done with you people. Between the fucking the mother and the suckling on your nipples, fuck it. That's it. I'm out.
No, but think
I
about
bet
it.
you could get milk out of his nipples, so I bet you could.
But the idea here is that they're regressing when they're doing
That's
that.
quite a serious breast pump, I gotta tell you.
Well, but they're regressing back to that infancy state. They're leaving that executive function state and they're going back. Why would you do something like that to them? Simple. You want to break that state. You want to get them going, what the fuck? And you go, oh, welcome back. And you explain to them that you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but if the person can't hear you, you're lying to them, no matter what you say. And most people think they're having a conversation or they're discussing things with people. They're not. They're talking at them, but the person doesn't have any place for that in their lexicon, in the way the worldview. And if you just walk into someone's world and you don't know what their worldview is, guess what? You're going to judge their worldview by yours. And now you're the difficult person calling them difficult.
Right.
You got to understand, appreciate their world.
I think it is really hard because we so often live in our world. I was teaching a class at a college, an acting class. And one of the things that we did, which was just fun, was we all took on different names for that semester, and we all got to rename ourselves. And I just did this like silly little thing that I was like sprinkling water and baptizing people in their new names. Well, we had a fundamentalist Christian in the class. I got reported that I was starting this cult, and it was just a fun thing. And in theater, you're always doing like these outrageous things, and I had no clue. Whatsoever. And I wrote her this letter of apology, which she was very surprised about, but I literally thought that we were starting a cult. And I think that in my own life, the times I've gotten myself in the most trouble is because I'm just, I'm just so surprised that someone would take something, that I said that way, yeah. You were going to say something.
So there was an interesting exercise that I had to do in my temple, and everybody had to do it, but I remember this. And the exercise was, as you walk into a room and you talk to other people, you imagine a camera looking down at you. And you have to describe yourself, not from your point of view, but from the point of view of the person you're talking to. So how do you see yourself clearly from the outside? It's a horrible, horrible thing because it triggers us in so many different ways. But once you get past that, once you learn how to see yourself from the outside, not the way you see yourself from the inside, but you see yourself as others see you, it becomes so much better, and you understand why you trigger them. You understand why you're the asshole, right?
Yeah, and it's mostly it's not out of malice, or it's not a thing of commission, it's an omission. You don't know what you don't know. And this is where you get a lot with intellectual societies where people are discussing ideas and they do what's called steel manning the argument. So if you don't agree with somebody, if you have a difficult relationship, you basically say, okay, tell me what you think I'm saying. Tell me what you heard. and say it in such a way that I would agree that, yes, that's what I'm saying. And so you have to be generous. You can't put your own editorial on it, because you're not telling me what you think, you're telling me what you think I think. Right. So what that does is it calibrates it. When I had the clinic for years, I would get a lot of couples that came to me. And whenever the couples would come to me, I always tell them, the problem you think is the problem is not the problem. The problem is that you have is you can't communicate the problem that you're feeling, because you think, well, she won't let me, or he always. And the fact is you have no idea what each other are saying half the time. You don't even know what the fuck you're doing half the time. And you're a horrible host and you're a horrible guest, because when you don't, if you're hungry, your manners go out the window, yes or no, when it comes to eating.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So when your needs are going down, you're starving, you're going to have your worst behavior. That's a biology thing. That's mammals. Dogs, even bunnies will bite you when they're super ravenously hungry. It's just the way it is. And so this person, now you're like, oh, I love you so much, and they're inside their Dunbar number, like really close inside. Well, that's a really difficult thing for you to just be like, well, you know, you're going to do it this or else. And it starts to become this sort of ultimatum. And so the trick is you cannot control people, but you try with your definitions, like, no, it's this. And it's like, that's control, that's tyranny. You got to let, they have their own way of expressing, you have your way of expressing. Now find out, are they saying the same concept? And some people are control freaks and they're like, no, you don't get to say, it is. And it's like, and this is the person that'll go to fucking Merriam-Webster's dictionary and be like, no. And you're like, but
You know, when I first went to a Byron Katie workshop, the price of admission happened, you know, like the first thing that she said, and this was like worth the whole price of admission. She said, do you want to make people happy? Let them be right.
yeah.
It's like the easiest thing.
Yeah.
And also just, you know, just to say whatever somebody's saying, just to say, you know, you could be right. And just be open. It's just because it's just winning an argument. And what does it really matter? Because once you've said that, the wind, you know, just gets let out of the tires, because, you know, the dukes can come down, you know.
Yeah.
I'm reading a really nice book right now. It was recommended to me, and I really like it because it sounds very Taoist to me, but obviously it's not. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
And it was written by a guy who's the #1 hostage negotiator for the FBI. And it's a fantastic, fantastic book. And I highly recommend this to absolutely everybody. Chris Voss, I think, is his name. And he says something insanely Taoist, and just an amazing how he puts it. He says, listening is an active skill. It's not a passive skill.
Right. Yes.
How cool is that?
Yeah. But you know, but these are the things that we're not taught, because, you know, whenever you're taught, you're talking about, Arorah, we're talking about when you're being a little kid and your parents are difficult. Your parents aren't difficult. You don't have the portions of your brain
Right.
to be able to understand the world. You're fully go a little centric. But when your parents are trying to teach you and you're always refractory and always pushing back, which is also important to get your own neural networks going. So it's a feature, it's not a bug. The trick is parents don't realize, in this whole morass of drinking through a fire hose of being a parent and being a kid, you're missing steps, because everything is done in steps. And the first steps are to listen, but you can't tell a kid to listen, because when you go, listen, that's never worked in the history of people, right? And so we skip steps. And then when we sort of things calm down as we get a little older, we never go back and make those steps up. And sometimes you hear things like, my master would tell me things at 12 years old, and I'd be like, yeah. And then at 35, I would go, fuck.
I had the same epiphany over and over. I'm like, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But you know, the thing is like your brain doesn't form till it's 26, but it doesn't really technically turn on until you're about 40. And the reason why is because you've got all this stuff in your head. That's where you get all the idealism and all the revolution.
Especially with men, right, Lao?
Mm-hmm. And then what happens is those neural networks start to pare down. And then you start to get rid of all the extraneous stuff, and you start to see what's important. That's where it turns on. You go, oh. And then you can actually get onto so it's very difficult. It doesn't mean that you can't people at 24, but it's not going to make as much sense as it will when you get older. But nobody wants to be told at 24, you're not old enough. You'll get it when nobody wants to be told that because they know shit.
I also think that, you're talking about a time when there's very often impatience, and I can see that with myself when I'm impatient, and I kind of get that from my dad. My dad was very impatient. Everybody seems really difficult around you, because it's not moving fast enough. The project's not moving fast enough. People are not, falling into line fast enough. And I think that, for me, impatience, what is that prayer? God, give me patience and I want it right now. you know, but I think impatience is really one where immediately I can see that around me, things feel difficult and people seem more difficult.
Sure, because you can't accept when you're impatient. You resist, right? And so the Buddhist idea of suffering comes from resisting what is.
Right.
Impatience is resisting what is.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, it's also a sign that you're not grounded in yourself, right? Because when you're grounded, the concept of patience goes away. Patience and impatience, because you just are. And things take as long as they need to take, and you don't even think about that, right? So one of the signs for yourself that you're not grounded, you're not working yourself, you're not breathing, you're not being embodying your body and everything, is the fact that you have no patience. You're running away from yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Your mind is running, it's doing its own thing while your body is doing its totally something else.
Yeah.
Combine those things and things become very different.
Right.
Wow, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially
What I hear is that, when you're impatient, there's a part of you that's here and there's a part of you that's back here, and you need to bring it all together so that you're grounded and you're in the moment. That's really good.
And why grounded? Because it's reality.
Yeah,
up here,
exactly.
not so much reality.
Yeah.
But in your feet, there's definitely reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the idea. When you're grounded, then there's nothing to be defended against. There's nothing to be offended against. And then, because that's the big problem, is that people are constantly vying for supremacy of whose illusion and whose mental illness is supreme. It's like, no, my protected class status is this. No, it's this guy. And it's like, first off, calm the hell down. Okay. Have you pooped today? Calm down. Right? Because how many people are in
We have so much potty talk going on today. I can't.
Dude, we should get a t-shirt. Once we get the Patreon account set up the right way and everything right, it will be a t-shirt. Have you pooped today, Lao?
Well, right. But think about it. It's just that one biological function. I mean, you can't get much more grounded than that. That's as real as it gets. But that causes so much tension in the background to your nervous system. It causes so much tension to your body because of people and their extreme bathroom, phobias and fears and can't be heard and like all of these things. And so it's a symptom, but it also makes you ask. It's a stark thing to make you go, what am I getting so upset about? And you realize it's just kinetic energy because like you said, you're in your head, and you don't realize that you're not in that person's world. They're not in your world, right? You have to be a good ambassador for your ideas, but a good ambassador meets another ambassador on a very neutral playing ground and goes, so how does this work in your world? And if you're a really good ambassador, you've got some background on how their world works. Like, for example, the ambassador of Japan meets with the ambassador of Iceland, right? In Japan, you don't take your chopsticks and just put them in the rice bowl. That's really bad manners.
Yeah, you don't.
Right? You take them and you place them at the head of the bowl with the eating point to the left. That's just the way they are. Now, if you're a good ambassador, you don't be like, well, fuck you, I'm Icelandic. What are you gonna do? I'm 7 feet tall, right? You don't do that because you're instantly, that person's not receptive to you anymore. That person is already closed to you because now you're a them. Now there's no us. And so being a good host and a good guest is about being like, I need to understand and appreciate your world. And then I don't need to control you, but I can influence you. But you can't influence something you're judging.
So what I'm seeing, what you're saying is the difference between you come to me and figure me out, or I'm going to come to you and figure you out. and
Yep.
it's very generous to go in and say, who are you? How can I see you so that I can be of service in some way?
Right. Because also, if you're saying, come to me and figure who I am, you're also putting your shit on them and you're going to judge all their actions by your filters.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's not their actions.
Yeah.
So arrogance versus humility, right?
Sure.
We always go back to this,
Yeah.
right? What's a closed system? What's an open system?
Sure.
Right? If you're in a state of humility, it doesn't matter. So what? So you learn how to put those chopsticks in the right way. Did it take anything away from you? No. But what did it do? It predisposed you to this person. Now this person is interested in listening to you as opposed to instantly not interested in listening to you.
Yeah. There's a psychological law of reciprocity that says if I give you credit for your ideas and the validity of your beliefs, you're mentally and morally obligated to do the same to me, because no humans don't like to be indebted in their mind. They don't like to feel beholden to somebody. Right. So if I'm Icelandic and I come to Japan and I learn at least a couple words and I try to say them reasonably well and I learn to sit properly, they're going to be like, this guy legitimately cares. He's paying
Right.
attention to detail.
It's really true.
He's not seeing himself as superior.
Yeah.
And you know what will happen? They'll put you on an elevated status versus, but that's the thing, right? This is what I teach the priests in my program is that if you want something, you have to give it.
Mhm.
Right? I can't ask you to connect to me and feel connection. It won't work. And even if I were to somehow make it work, now I'm dependent on you and you've got my remote control. And there's a disadvantage and I gave you my power versus being like, Arorah, what is connection to you? What does that look like? And then,
Just like this.
okay. Okay. And so,
You know, like what you're talking about is like the ultimate entitlement. You know, like you know, like we feel entitled that everybody around us should give us what we want or should make us feel good, or, you know, rather than what you just said, just go to them first, like give what you want, be to them what you want them to be to you.
you might be right.
So it's interesting, you know, how a tree moves water,
Yeah.
right, from the roots all the way through, right? It does it by evaporating through the leaves. It evaporates the water on top. That creates a vacuum, which then pulls the water up, right? But in order to start that cycle, the tree has to offer something to create that vacuum.
Yeah.
It can't just do it out of nowhere. It can't take before it gives.
Right.
So it's the same thing with us.
Yeah.
First you give, and then you can take. If you do the opposite, it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Now,
But what about like overgiving? You know, does that start to become manipulative? Like, you know, like say a mother, you know, with her children, you know, giving too much and not, you know, like there's a balance, right?
Yes, that's about control.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about control. You can influence someone, but when you get to controlling it, that's always going to be manipulation, even if you're manipulating them. Now, obviously, if you've got a small child, you have no choice to control and manipulate them. They're not conscious enough to, as long as you're doing it for their best interest, meaning you're not, you know, getting them to be like, hail Satan or whatever. But I mean, if you're doing it, what's in their best interest for their development.
And not till at least they're 5 or something.
Well,
They can do it on their own.
It's like wearing white after Labor Day. Don't be a whore, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
But right. So, and some people say to me, well, like, how do you know when you're being selfish about it, how you're being altruistic? And it's like, if we're both winning, if it both makes us better versions of ourselves, then obviously it's a good thing. If you're doing it to be happy or to get something at my expense, there's the dick move right there. There's the dick move. So, you know,
to feel safe, to feel happy, to feel like, well, the sort of fulfillment of like, well, this is my child. Look at what they're doing. It's living through them.
Sure. And you can't do that, but you have to also probably figure out that probably before having kids, which most people's biology doesn't let them do. And so they end up having kids sort of before They're even ready to stop being a kid themselves. But and the thing is the concept with difficult people is that no person is difficult, but there can be difficult circumstances between the way you deal with the world and what they deal with the world, especially if neither of you are going to budge. If neither of you two are going to budge, then I mean you're at loggerheads. There may be a slim chance that you're sympathetic, but most likely you're just going to have distortion. You have to be able to say, don't want to be right or happy.
So let me ask you. So I just had this experience with someone who was. So there was a meeting. I don't want to get into it very much, but there was someone there that I could see later that I think he was in shock because he was concerned about somebody else, I think. But at the time, what happened was just he was just coming at me with lots of stuff and a lot of anger and young guy, nice guy, but just coming at me. And I knew that the answer was that this is the way it is. Like, it's not going to change. It's going to be this way. But there was this fight about it, and that's just what you do as a parent. It's like, yeah, it's this way. You can say whatever you want, but this is the final verdict. What do you do then in situations where it's going to be difficult because you can't make a compromise really, because that's the way it is. And the person is, I think he was kind of in a PTSD kind of shock or something like that. Later, I looked at that. But how do you go about working in negotiating something where the answer is what it is and you can't change it?
Well, you have to first start every situation or every thing with is do we both want the same thing? You cannot compromise with somebody who does not want what you want. This is why divorce rate is so high. They don't want the same thing, and you cannot compromise with somebody who does not want what you want. Marriages that last, or partnerships in business that last, or any other thing that lasts, is because you both want the same thing.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt you right there, just as to get real about it. So let's say you're talking to your kid and you're like, 8:00 is your bedtime, and you don't want the same thing.
Right.
Read this book. Read this book that I was talking about. He actually talks about that. But that being said, let's talk about your situation, right? The question to ask yourself in that moment, is this right for me? Right? Yeah. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Right? Yeah. And if you clearly see yourself, if you clearly understand why you're there, it will make it that much easier for you to adjust to the situation, for you to try to understand the situation. If you have no idea why you're there and you have no idea who you are, it's basically game over. There's no way to adjust at that point, because remember, you're the 000 point on the graph, right? Everything starts with you. So if you don't see where you are and when you start, you can't see where you're going. You can't see where you should be going with this situation.
Sure. And the thing is, and this is where Arthur was just talking about, emptying the self, is that oftentimes people bring out of us things, right? Just when you put things together, they bring out of us, and you go, well, I don't like who I am around this person. Well, first they say, use the first language is, I don't like that person. It's like, you don't like that person, or you don't like who you are when you're around them.
Right.
It's about you. Yeah. It's about you. It's fucking about you. And then maybe if you make peace with that person, who you are when you're out, maybe if you get some competency with that, maybe if you want to integrate that, and they go, so they can just be an asshole. And I'm like, or you can just be an asshole. and it's like, no, I want this rigid, sort of swath of this is all I'm going to be and nothing outside. It's like, then you're going to have to go live in a nerfed little, cry closet, because there's no other, the world is full of a whole bunch of people. And I work with people, like I've had students, I've had patients, I've had clients that I despise how they deal with the world. But I despise it simply because the things that I valued aren't there. Now, I still work with them. And you see me, I'm the best version of myself. And the reason why is because what I do is a mark on me. What they do is a mark on them. I'm not going to internalize their shit. And I know that even when they're not in the room with me, they're still being this person. They're still doing those things. So it's like, what, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist? Well, fuck, who the fuck's an ostrich, man? Don't be doing that. You have to deal with it. And then you have to say, but if I change who I am, or what's important to me, or what I say I believe when I'm around this person. Do I ever really say it? Do I really believe what I say? So it's about holding yourself personally responsible and accountable for, do you really believe what you say you believe? Because that's the time when it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, it's also seeing that it's an opportunity to grow. I was coaching someone who was always getting these roommates who would really boss her around, or would, be really, really difficult. And she'd been, sort of moving from place to place every year, 6 months. And we were, she was talking to me, and she said, she was crying. She's like, I've got to leave. I have such a bully for a roommate, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you can't leave. You can't leave because you keep getting this situation over and over. The universe is telling you, you need to stand up for yourself. You can't leave until you have, learned this lesson. You're just going to get in the same thing again. So about a month later, she said, we just got in this big fight, and I just told her exactly what I thought. And she's like, and then she like capitulated, and I got what I wanted. And then like about 3 months later, she got a place of her own. And that was what she'd always wanted. So, it's like these difficult people may be the places where we need to grow.
But this world is there to teach us lessons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? We can either learn them, right? Or we can fight against them.
Yeah.
Pick one, right? One is a really simple use of energy. It's efficient.
Yeah.
One, you'll waste energy over and over and over again until you drop dead.
Yep.
Right? So like in that book, Yoga, Autobiography of a Yogi, you'll either learn humility or suffer life's humiliations.
Mhm.
Pick one. One or the other is going to happen.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's sort of where each person is they, biology is insane when it comes to, like, whether it's plants or bugs or even humans, is that we always want to stake out a certain territory. And we always want to make that territory our territory, whether it's intellectual territory, whether it's identity territory. Like if you get a family of 6 girls, they will all be as different as you can possibly imagine, because God forbid you have any similarities with somebody with ovaries in your own bloodline. Jesus Christ. You're wearing that.
I came from 5 girls, okay, and I can tell you we're all very different.
Yeah,
I'll give you a very different story of our childhood.
exactly. Like I used to date a girl, and she had 5 sisters, and like they would do this thing because they all at one point lived together as adults, which was a horrible. Oh, I get PTSD from that. And so, anyways, they would be getting ready to go out and do whatever, and they'd be like, "Why are you wearing that?" And she's like, "I just want to wear this." And then she would go and change. They're not going to the same place even, but she would go and change because you can't wear this because you're wearing that. It's like, what? And then people are like, when I tell people about, biology and evolutionary biology and all, and people are like, I don't know if I believe in that. I'm like, you're fucking high, man. You live around it literally every day. The problem is when you make these territories and they make them hard and fast, guess what? Someone's going to come into your territory. And now you're going to be constantly in a challenging situation where you're trying to challenge my authority. It's like, get the fuck over yourself, man. You're not the only person in the world. And many people want to be special, or they want to be significant, or what, unique, or whatever. And so anybody who is even remotely challenges that, they just start to lash out. And then they go, that person's difficult. It's really, that person's not doing what I say. It's really what that comes down to be.
Well, also, I think what's hard sometimes is when somebody is upset with me, or somebody doesn't like me for whatever reason, and there's this need to prove, like, but I'm really a good person, or, and letting go of, it's like their business, what they think of me is their business. It's not my business. And just letting go of the need to prove at some point, because sometimes that's all it is. We have a thing in feng shui where it's called yes but chi. Have you ever heard of it? My feng shui teacher would say, dealing with people with yes but chi is like, it's hard to cure. There's no feng shui cure really for yes but chi. And yes but is the person that you'll say, okay, you can do this, and they'll say yes but da 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 da, and then you're like, but then you can do this, and they're like, yes but da 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 da, and it's just like there's never yes but.
Do that again. I love it.
They've got a problem for every solution.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's just like, yes, but you don't understand it. Yes. And it is, it's like there's really a need to have a problem continue to be a problem. Yeah.
We said this in another episode, which is some people are happiest when they're bitching.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the way around it. And so what do? Let them bitch.
Yeah.
What does it cost you? It's cost you nothing. You're like, well, it's so draining. Then go get a job. Go get a fucking date. Get away from them.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to think that I'm a bad person. Stop manipulating them. You know, you're going to probably find this difficult. So I'm giving you all trigger warning. You're probably going to be like, no, but.
Oh, sure. You give them a trigger warning for this, but not about the whole nipple thing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You didn't give Arthur a trigger warning for that one.
Right?
Arthur has implied consent that I never need give trigger warnings because he consistently shows up. And showing up after knowing me as long as he's known me.
Yeah, that's really true.
Already given.
Yeah, you know.
Touché. Absolutely.
Okay. But here's the thing, that there are people in this world that don't like me. I know. There are people in this world that have a hard time when they're around me. I know. Shut the front door.
Does it start with a B?
It starts with A through Z, but B is one big one, yeah. But the truth is that the truth of the matter is this: the people that I've like worked for or worked with, or the even clients that I've had that really have a hard time, typically within 2 months, those are the people who become very, 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 very close to me. It's typically within 2 months. But the people who start off as, oh, Lao, I love you. You're so amazing. It's so wonderful. Those are the fuckers that I always look in behind them for those long knives, because I know at some point they're going to run it right through my ribs.
You're absolutely right.
And the reason why is it takes time to get to know somebody. I am not an easy person to understand initially. I understand that. I know that. But the reason why is and it's not about it being smart or being a douse. It's a matter of your experience. Right? I've had people who, great mom and dad, great family life, went to a good school, went to a good college, never had arguments, no traumas, no abuses, nothing. Just a very, very decent life. I have no understanding of that life. Full disclosure, I full stop, no competency with those things. And so my life has been an extraordinary, and I try to be extremely illustrative about it simply because I already know people don't know where I'm coming from. For example, this is a kind of a heavier topic, but I was talking with somebody the other day and they're like, what is your issue with blame? I'm like, I don't know I had an issue with blame. They're like, well, from where I see, you hate when people blame you to the point where you're always like, I'm not taking your credit. I'm not taking your blame. I'm like, well, it's disingenuous to take their credit and not take their blame, but neither one has anything to do with me. They're like, but I've heard you say blame more than once. So I'd like you to, I say, okay, that's fair. And if I do that to people and they do it back to me, cool, it's fair, right? Because this is how we have, mutual understanding and appreciating each other's worlds. And I go, okay, when I was 6 years old, my dad had remarried. And he married a woman who had 3 grandkids. And those grandkids were probably just a few years younger, 4, 3 years old, whatever. And they had a game where they would either push each other down or they'd fall or something. Whenever would happen, or sometimes for nothing reason, they would just start screaming. But they wouldn't like scream like a little, they would scream a lot. And then as soon as the grandmother would come out, oh my God, what happened? What happened? He heard us. I wasn't even the fuck there. I had come running because I heard the screaming too. Anybody with a fucking set of eyes would see I'm coming from she was like, what happened? Like, he heard me, he beat, and then I would get the ass whipping of a fucking lifetime, like with the broomstick handle on the face, neck, like I might as well have been a pinata. And yet these kids would sit there and laugh at me because that was their game, watching me get beat by this woman who was a paragon of Christian society, and everybody loved her, and oh boy, she had the Bible studies, But then you have this. And so there would be times when I would just sit there and I would rock, trying not to go hurt those kids, because that was the way a 6-year-old thinks, that they're the source of it. So if I take them out, then they don't exist, right? This is a real thing. No 6-year-old should be contemplating that shit, but that's how it is. So your environment, your way you grow up doesn't define you, but it's formative, right? The people in the Maldives or in Indonesia, they have another chromosome allows them to breathe longer, hold their breath longer underwater because of their environment forming that adaptation. So it doesn't define you. You choose what you're going to do, but it does form some of those choices. So when it comes to blame, I learned very early that when someone blames you, it doesn't matter whether you did it or not. There's going to be fucking repercussions. So as a guy who's 6'2", 220 pounds, if I'm with a woman and we're just having a conversation, she runs out of the room saying I raped her, no one's going to say it didn't happen. No one's going to say, oh, he's being said, even if I ain't do a goddamn thing. And that's been my life in many instances, because I lived in a lot of different countries. And so the foreigner, blame the foreigner. People think, and so blame is an issue. So I'm having this conversation with them, and they were just looking at me like, why would you tell me that? I'm like, because you fucking asked. And most people don't know how to be raw like that. Most people, to me, it's not raw. It's just what happened. I don't care one way or the other. I got no dog in the fight anymore. But for some people, like that's called real life, and it's happening every day, and you can look away from it, but it's real life, and you don't want to deal with it because you got this narrative that no, only bad people ever get bad, and only good people get good, and if you just do good, you'll never get bad, and if you do bad, you'll never get good. It's like, what fucking world do you live in? But I also understand that they live in that world, and I live in this world, and they're never going to understand that initially. But the more experiences you have in your life, the farther it's going to take you away from people, not bring you closer. You'll have to bring people closer to you by using that pain, that trauma to say, because every one of those people who are pretending that they're all polite society people, they've got it too. They're all pretending and repressing it, saying society won't let you. No, it's not society won't let you. You're just a bitch and you won't actually say something because you care more about what they think than your own self-respect. But come here, sweet pea. Come here. Come to Lao. I'll give you a hug because I know I've been there. And I don't really give a fuck. In fact, to me, to be liked by those fucking people is no recommendation at all. That to be approved of by an ill-adjusted society is no goddamn compliment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It is. It's so what you're really saying is like, take a look at the people that you're trying to prove something to. Are these really the people that you need to do that with?
Or you're trying to please them.
Please
right?
them. Yeah. Yeah. Are they? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but if you live the Tao, if you live the way, if you live it, you have to live your own way. There's just no other way around that.
So now you have me thinking about, because I liked you from day one. Now you have me thinking about what is wrong with me, that I got along and liked you from day one. So now I have to go on that journey, Lao. Thanks a lot.
In the back because we all get along too much.
Well, but the thing the reason why we get along is because we've all had to deal with some pretty deep shit in real life.
Yes.
And whereas, and this may sound condescending. I'm sorry if it comes out that way. It's not. It isn't really condescending if you just listen to what I'm saying, not through the shit in your ears, but what I'm actually saying, right? No filters. Most people can't wait to have a life where nothing bad happens to them, but it keeps them stupid and childish because only children want or need that life. Adults they need problems. Adults need real shit to happen because it gives you the perspective to know here is average, here is bad, here's good. If there's no bad, your average becomes bad. Your good becomes average, and you have to have this crazy, you're not calibrated. You're way out of perspective and proportion. And then when somebody who's had real bad comes and he's like, oh, that's not that bad. And you're like, you're negating my experience. And oh my God. And now, in like, for example, at the University of Michigan, sorry, University of Michigan, I'm throwing you out there, but shouldn't have fucking done it. They have hide closets and safe spaces for people. So after elections, if you don't feel comfortable and safe, you can go get a juice box and some Legos and some Play-Dohs in fucking higher education. So you can have self-care and play day. Are you fucking with me right now?
Yeah.
But you know what?
There's an entitlement that there should be no problems.
Yes.
An
Yes.
entitlement that
Yes.
that the world should always be safe and you should always get your needs met the way that you want them to.
Yeah. And that's not real.
But that's also part of the journey, right?
Yeah,
And that's this world creates, as we talked about, it creates the lessons necessary for you to evolve, necessary for you to move forward, for your soul, right? And if that wasn't around, how would you know? How would you experience that? You need to experience these things.
Yes.
Whatever it is your soul needs, right? And each one of us is different, and each one of our trajectories is different.
Yes. And that's the whole point of it, is that because that's what they need. I don't tell them they shouldn't have that. I think it's bad for them in the long game, but I'm not on their soul path. Their Shen knows what they need in the long game. But knowing that they're not, when I was talking about the chemistry, they're phobic for me. We don't have any business with each other. We have no transactions. I don't have to hate them for that. I can wish them well on their journey. But at the end of the day, we're all going the same direction. No, we're all going the same destination from different directions. Meaning, think about life being a tourist, right? Some people are going away from the Shen. Some people are coming towards the Shen, right?
Right.
You're going in different directions, but you're really going to the same destination, right? So
it'll end up, yeah.
So just because you look like, oh, he's going this way, I'm going this way, that's wrong. No, that's right for their soul path. But all of these things aren't to say that I'm better and they're bad. No, that's what people hear. What I'm trying to say is that they're not for me and I'm not for them, which is why you'll never see them in my programs.
And that's okay.
One other thing I want to just say, and that is that, you know, like if anyone had to, like, I could never live the life that you've lived, Lao. I mean, like, I don't know how you do it, what you've lived.
It's because he doesn't have a choice.
Well, he does. That's very true. But I, you know, like everybody comes into a room, everyone says their problems and everybody leaves with their own, right? You know, it's sort of like, but I can also see how the life that you've lived has just created very strong person, you know, like somebody who can deal with a lot of different things. And I think that in a certain way, and we've talked about, you know, just that we live in this very opulent society that, you know, if it takes your computer 2 seconds more to start, you know, you have a right to get upset by that, you know. I remember when I was starting up my computer and I could read a whole book by the time it started up, you know, because it took so long. But I think that some people have nervous systems or a very shorter fuse than others, where what may, you know, like get a hangnail and it could be as if someone dies for them. It's just, there's such a, you know, a heightened sense of their ability to cope, but it may not be anything, it may not be being spoiled or something like that. It's just that they are so, they're raw in some place.
Yeah, 100%.
But let's go back to that being grounded, right? Being grounded in yourself, it takes effort. It's not something that happens instantly. It takes a journey. But what does that do? It provides structure, right? And why you need that structure? Because if you have that structure, you can now be flexible. Because you can have flexibility with structure, because then you'll still stay together. You'll just bend, right? Now, what happens when you have flexibility and no structure?
Right.
Right? You have nothing to be attached to. You have no grounding.
Yeah. So
the journey you go on, this exploration of self, is to provide that structure where you then can be flexible.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Arorah?
What are 3 things that you would suggest to create a structure for yourself if you're an overly sensitive person? Arthur, what would you say?
Don't listen to Lao. No, I'm just.
Number 1.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Don't listen to me.
Oh, bad nipples. Don't do it.
Never, man.
Okay. Where did you just go, Arthur?
He was just feeling himself, and it was just so beautiful and horrible at the same time. So who says there's no duality? Anyways, so recognizing the problem is the most important step towards actually dealing with it, right? So if you're overly sensitive, right, instead of focusing on that being overly sensitive, understand that this is your condition, understand that this is your problem, right? Then it becomes less of a problem, because now you've shined a light on it. Now you can see it for what it is, and you get triggered way less about it. You react way less about it. I mean, that's the first step towards all these things. Now, why does AA work? For those who actually work it, it's the same steps. Recognize there's a problem, then you can actually take steps to deal with it. If you can't find ways of dealing with by yourself, right? Now that you recognize the problem, now you may recognize that it's way bigger than I am. It's way stronger than I am. Find help. We, as Lao pointed out, are these amazing monkeys that need each other, right? We support each other, right? We share things with each other. That doesn't include just bananas. It includes knowledge of how to get the banana. It includes whatever we acquired in this path. This is part of our DNA. This is our design. We can't help it. We can't keep our mouths shut. I mean, why the hell are we doing this thing here, right? We're three monkeys who can't keep our mouths shut about the shit we learned and experienced.
Legit.
Right? So find the right monkey for yourself. Keep looking. It's out there, right?
Yeah.
Just because you didn't succeed in the first time you were looking for the monkey doesn't mean it's not out there. It is. I guarantee you it is. We're sitting here as the result of finding the right monkeys on our path.
Yeah.
That helped form us, that helped shape us, that helped us deal with those things that created obstacles in our path. Right. And you know, without joking, why we're sitting here is we'd like to help others find ways of moving those obstacles, of dealing with those obstacles. So if being overly sensitive is an obstacle, it's a problem, find the right monkey if you can't figure it out for yourself. And for the most part, you can't. These things are way bigger than us. I gotta be honest with you, if it wasn't for my teachers, there's just no way I'd be sitting here. There's just no way I could have figured this out by myself. It's way bigger in just one lifetime. I mean, there's a reason my teacher kept pushing this notion on me throughout many, not just on me and everybody in the temple, that, you know, he had a lineage that was unbroken for thousands of years. Why is that lineage important? Because that from master to student, that builds and builds and builds, because it's impossible to do it all, to get it all in one lifetime. All you can do is get little glimmers of it here and there and hopefully pass it on. Right? So if that helps, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. I think one of the things that people can do practically, and I do this to myself every day, because some people, like, you know, Arorah said, she thinks that I'm strong. And Arthur was very right. I didn't have a choice. I didn't ask for this. I mean, nobody would choose to. Now, if you ask me in retrospect, would you go back and do it again, knowing what you know now? I would say yes. Every one of it, even though the things that you're like, oh my God, you would never. I'm not going to say I'm going to go skipping and jump into it, but I'll say that yes, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything. And the reason why is the freedom I have now comes at the price I paid for this path, and I paid a steep price, and I continue to pay it. Friday night, somebody very close to me, I don't know if he knew he was diabetic or not, but he ended up going to the hospital at 5 p.m. because his blood sugar was over 600. He was dead by 10 p.m. Out of the blue, sudden. I had just spoke with him like not too long before, and I remember thinking he's kind of felt tired. But you never know that was going to be my last conversation with this person ever. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and then the very next day, I have to surrender my dogs because one of them snapped, and I found all these other things I didn't know about, you know, siblings, etc. And it's like, by the end of it, I'm just like, you know, damn, And just because, you know, some people think, well, I want to become a Taoist priest, or I want to become a Buddhist master, or what they think is they're getting a backdoor out of life, where I'll be so zen, I'll never have to deal with anything. I'll be so like, it's like, you're going to get more, not less.
Yeah,
Fact.
exactly.
And the reason why is if you go to reality, you can call it Tao, God, whatever you want, and you say, I want a direct experience with you and follow you and become one with you, you're going to get more of it.
Yeah.
And this is life, right? Life is happening when you're making plans. Well, this is life. And so it's like this whole thing that happened. Plus, I still had to go teach on Saturday, and I had a bunch of other things to do. And it hit me hard because now there's holes that need to be filled, and I have to rechange calculus. And some people are like, you know, how do you stay so composed? It's like, I've had over 30 people dead by the time I was 18 years old, really close people to me. And I've lost over 60 something people in my life, not to mention all the other stuff from, you know, war and all. So it's like Death and I are old friends. It ain't easier. It ain't like it's better. But I also respect and understand it. But it didn't come because I read, you know, oh my God, I was reading some Livia Kahn. Livia wrote this really nice. No. It's because you go through it enough that you sit with it enough. At first, the first part, you're just like, this sucks. And then start over, you're like, why me? Like, what am I, cursed? But then you start to go, I see. Okay. And you stop resisting it and you start accepting that. And accepting it for most people is a hard thing. It's like, no, I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to be okay with it. It's like, well, you're going to fucking suffer because it's going to keep hitting you in the fucking head and you can't stop. But if you can go with it, if you don't swim up the stream, go with it. No matter how much you like that piece of land on either side of you, go with the flow. There'll be better times, there'll be worse times, but you don't really have any other choice, like your heart says, or you waste all your energy. You don't have a choice in this. People think that they have a choice, but you have very little free will.
No choices.
The only real choice you have is how will you comport yourself when presented with the decision. That's it.
When fate knocks on your door, how do you open that door? But what you said, and by the way, Lao, my condolences about your friend.
Mine too. Did you say that your dog, you had to get rid of your dogs too?
Yeah, both of them. You have to surrender.
I'm so sorry.
But what's, you know, the lesson, you know, I'd like to at least point out for people is, it's a harsh one, but it's a very important one, is that we never know when that last moment comes, right? So if you start treating every conversation as it's your last, you'll stop reacting the way you're reacting because you realize it's your last. And you'll be a different person in that conversation, and you'll be much more attentive, right? And you'll be much more compassionate, and you'll be much less closed because it's your last one. Instead of thinking that you have this runway, because I hear people all the time, well, my financial planner, no shitting on that particular profession, tells me, you know, by statistics, I should live another like 30 years or something like that. And I'm going to make this plan and I'm going to live another 30 years and et cetera, et cetera. But you don't even know if tomorrow is going to be around, let alone 30 years of tomorrows. If you treat life that today is your last day, you will notice you react very differently to it, and you appreciate people way more in your life than if you treat them like they're disposable straw dogs and you can just basically see them whenever you want for the rest of your life.
Yeah, my master used to say, plan like you're going to live for 80 more years, live like you're going to die tonight.
Wow, I don't think we can do better than that, you guys. That's a good way to end this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful conversation.
Thank you both.
Love you guys.
Love you as well.
And many blessings to you.
Yep. Talk soon.
Okay. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.